The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Third Book. Quest for Uncle Kurt. Chapter 2. Since my mom gave me the briefcase with the letter of BELICENA VILLCA, until the moment in which I took the decision to fulfill her posthumous request, 4 days had elapsed. Certainly, I read the letter in record time, due to its extension and profundity, remaining isolated in my room, and descending, from time to time, for some food. Finally, one afternoon, I descended quietly, with the mysterious briefcase in my hands, and I sat within my people, who were as usual at that time deployed in the posterior courtyard. With the head reclined, and the gaze lost in the remoteness of the hills, I remained in silence for a long time. During that lapse no one interrupted, accustomed to seeing me, studying beneath the shadow of the gigantesque oak tree. Only the murmur of the wind in the leaves, the trill of the birds, and the res-res of Canuto, when he scratched his body each time I saw him, accompanied my meditation. I stood up abruptly, putting aside the bench of the garden. Next to the nilapacho trees were my parents. Mom darning the socks of my nephews and Dad reading a European seminary that arrives 15 days delayed. In the meantime, the cassette of Angelito Viegas rewound for umpteenth time, involving us all with 3 corners. Dad, Mom, I said emphatically, did you have in your family ancestors, or relatives who followed an office or craftsmanship by tradition? That was a very common custom in Europe, my father responded thoughtful, today unfortunately forgotten. In my family existed many doctors like you, hetero, and even apothecaries as my father, but without being a law, because we had many agriculturists like me. My father loved celebrating his occurrence. The family of your mother instead, he continued more relaxed, have also a tradition of the cultivation and production of sugar. You know that, I knew her in Egypt when my father, in the 35, decided to open new markets for the trading of tannin, considering that the textile industry of Europe and America worked subjected to rigid monopolies. My father was thinking to sell tannin to the blooming Arab and Turkish textile industries. For it, he started a journey through Middle East, which final destination was Egypt. I had 18 years in that period, and, opposed to the desires of my father, who preferred to see me converted in an engineer, my greatest aspiration was to be a farmer. Trusting in that the long journey would end dissipating what my father took it as a caprice, and he accepted to take me with him. When we arrived to Egypt, we were received by his great-uncle, Hans Setonal, member of branch of the family that dwells, until our days, near to El Cairo. The Setonals of Egypt lived there, apparently, since the invasion of Napoleon, along with hundreds of families of German origin, and they constitute a strong community. Well, during the days that we passed in El Cairo, my interest was focused in the observation of the large sugar mills that was extended around the Nile, and the endless sown extensions with sugarcane. When my dad saw that, my inclination for the agriculture instead to decrease, it became more intense. He understood then that this was my real vocation, and he decided to accept the generous invitation of the Baron Rinaldo von Subema, landlord of a powerful empire of Ingenio, to stay in his plantations, studying the techniques of the cultivation. I was there since the year 35, to the 38, where the perspectives of the enduring world peace went diluted rapidly, yielding to the insistent calls of my father to return to Argentina. I undertook the return voyage in June of 38, but not alone. The daughter of the Baron von Subema, a beautiful Valkyria, who, for grace of Wetton, you can contemplate here present. We all laughed, especially my mother, who had remained with the eyes rolled, while my father was remembering his fascinating life. What happened then? I asked, knowing that it would be good for my father to complete the story. The war opened painful gaps, and forced definitive separations. After the death of your grandparents, my father and the Baron, we lost the communication with our relatives of Egypt. I've felt it many times for your mother, his voice went loosened, who is German, Egyptian, and has suffered a lot for the separation. Instead he continued more compounded. My patriotic feelings are with this country and I won't be better in any other place. You must notice that your great-grandfather, the first Sentinel, who came to America, did it in 1860, at the request of government to work in the fabrication of explosives, due to, he was reputedly as a prestigious chemist. In more than a century, my good Echiro, the Sentinels, have become more Argentinian than the mate. When my father did reference to the suffering that he had experienced for remaining far from his family and the homeland, my mother approached to him, and she started to caress his hair gently while she poured amorous reproaches. While they were giving affection each other, I felt my cheeks burning. I was like bewildered, looking at the already released imagination, tracing the most audacious hypothesis. The affirmation that BELICENA VILLCA did, in her letter about the familiar mission of working the sugar alchemically, was confirmed in principle by the narration of my father. Was an indubitable reality, that the von Subemans were sugar producers since immemorial times, but, how did she know? Poor of me. I not even dreamt that this confirmation about the guess of BELICENA was just the first of many situations that, in the future, would demonstrate me until what point the absurdity and the reality were blended around her. Tin, tin, the sound of the triangle that the Indian maid was ringing to call for the dinner freed me from such grave thoughts. That night, I was surprised, pleasantly, by a plate of delicious hymettus. That plate constitutes since my childhood the most valued delicacy. Thus indulged emotively and gastronomically by my family, I went calm and even forgot, for some moments, the obsessive matter of BELICENA VILLCA.